Resume recording. I'll point out that I was very naughty, been a naughty boy, because I have a crossover here between household purchases.
Don't worry about it. Only one. That's pretty incredible. Well done.
Yeah, and there's some variables here that I have off floating here that I haven't like gotten into the mix just yet for one reason or another. But what I found is just like it's like every one of these I could just kind of, you know, the Toyota 5Ys, you know, like, well, why is that happening? Well, why is it like I essentially could keep whying all this and just get more and more.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that is the case. I was just creating a FedWiki page, which I've called Group Causal Loop, which I'll share with you, which is about different methods of creating a diagram in a group. And you're quite right. One of the things I put at the bottom, the methods are mainly about how you'd actually create a diagram together. But then there's the whole issue of, you know, when are you finished? And you're touching on that with your question, you know, to keep asking those whys. But certainly, you know, within a diagram, I mean, I'm looking at this diagram now, and immediately the things that always attract my attention are the things that have either nothing going into them or nothing going out of them. And I can see two on here. So commute times. And I know on the previous one, it did affect other things that fed back. So commute times has got nothing. It doesn't affect anything in this model. And the other one, mentorship, now you've moved it, I can see it has got something coming in. I couldn't see it having anything in before. So whenever I see those, you know, that's a question that I'm always asking, because if you like, you know, it's a boundary of the model. It's going nowhere. It's not influencing anything. So that's something that we have to think about. And I know that in the model on Miro that you had commute times feeding into some really important things that fed into health.
Yeah, there's like the bonding times and everything. Yeah,
lots of so the thing that seems to be that I don't see on here that was on the other is more about time, because time's precious. Time is really precious, and we tend to focus when we talk about resources on money, but I think that the more scarce resource is time.
Yeah, no, you're right. So I probably had some like terror of crossing lines, and so I think if you look at this, like now basically how I've structured this, like a lot of the like psychological stuff is over here. Because like what I could see is commute times. There's it weakens the bonding time. It opposes the bonding time. Yeah, exactly. And then the bonding time. So maybe I'll just do that now and just see how it plays up. So
yeah. And then if you could just go down and to the right, I saw something else that just caught my attention that I can't see on the screen now, and go further over to the other, and then down. Yeah, so we got crime rates there. And I remember as well, yeah, that's going nowhere. And I remember that you had it feeding into lots of things, like that key thing about, do people want to bring their kids up in this area? Is it attractive for tourism? You had tourism feeding back into local business growth. You know, I'm just reflecting on what I remember of the model that we were looking at before. And then you see, whenever you do that, you know, whenever we're doing that, the immediate next question is what else?
Yes.
You know, so we've said that crime rates affects families moving to superior. What else might affect that? And this is the thing we're doing all the time. And when somebody says something, so, you know, what would you say? What else could affect families moving to superior?
High school graduation rates.
Okay, so high school graduation
or we could say quality education. Yeah.
So, and then the minute that somebody says that, my next question is how does that work?
Well, you get families who are evaluating places, and then they'll pull things like apparently people now, they'll pull things like what are the crime rates, what are the what's the scores of the school system,
Yeah.
and then they essentially like will, you know, choose yes, no. So there's like some kind of like an evaluation process that happens.
Yeah. But generally, you know, I'm demonstrating this for you in terms of facilitating other people. If everybody says, well, actually, that's clear to me, you know, quality education will affect it, I would put the arrow in, and then the how question is, in what direction? Is it supporting or opposing?
Yeah.
So there's the how as in the explanation, and it should be obvious. Do you know what I mean? There's the how. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Does access to quality education
and then people say,
affect?
oh yeah, I could see how it does.
So and if somebody there is in dissent, you know, and says, well, actually, I don't think, and this is why, we start to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because often what happens is that reveals more variables that people haven't always thought about. And then we explore those and we connect them in. And the last thing that we always do once we've connected an arrow is to ask, in what direction? Is it supporting or opposing?
Yeah. Okay.
So in this way, I'm trying to here, you know, coach you on how to facilitate others to develop these diagrams, because there are kind of, the skills are very similar in terms of being really structured with yourself. You know, almost when you're creating a causal loop diagram, you're facilitating yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and that same facilitation of yourself is exactly the same process with a group. But with the group, you've got the added thing to deal with of different people having different perspectives. Whereas when there's just yourself, you only have your own perspective to map. So dealing with different people coming up and saying, well, I don't agree with that, let's explore it. And then what you often find is that there are several routes. It's not the only route, you know, that there are other things. So yeah. And this is what we're doing all the time. You know, we're constantly asking these questions. And as you're quite right, as each new variable gets added, we start to ask questions about that. So what affects access to quality education? Is it something that we've already talked about? Is it already in, are there things already in the model that we need to link in? Or is there something new that this now brings up when we start to think about it?
Right. Yeah. And then, okay, so that's really good. Because I can talk about that, but with what I find is how there's some of these variables in the model that like are like they support one thing on one side, but they diminish another thing on the other side, which has let's say for access to quality education, I can say like tax rates going up, like especially in the United States, like we base it off of property tax values. So like property tax valuations going up in theory means access to quality education, because quality education goes up because there's more investment. But that for tax rates to go up on property means that housing prices go up. Housing prices go up, affect households to anyway. So I'm glad we're basically what I'm saying. I'm glad we're doing this, because I could see how it can start to help us to see, especially if we get to the point of doing some simulation stuff, that like we got to be careful about what variables we're really optimizing. And it seems like it's better to work on things that are going to have like a more holistic effect. But
there are always trade-offs, and the trade-offs are in space. So trade-offs onto other variables at the same time, and trade-offs in time. So things that you might do now that could create further problems further down the line. So this is always a thing that we're looking at. There are some interventions that aren't going to do that are going to be true system fixes, as we call them. And that's what we're looking for ultimately. You know, where are the big system fixes, the ones that do not create those problems by pushing the problem to another space or pushing it further away in time, and just being a sticking plaster, basically.
Nice. Yeah, it gets me thinking of those adaptogenics. Like there's different kinds of like plants or supplements or even stones that just like have a generally a good effect on the system versus like over optimizing a thing or another.
Yes. 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 So back to our families moving to superior, so we can connect our access to quality education into that, and that's a supporting relationship. Clearly, I guess there are some other things here that would affect whether families would move to superior. I mean, you know, the thing I'm thinking is whether there's work, whether I can afford to live in this place.
Right. Yes, let's just move these over a little bit. Yeah, whether you can afford to live there or not. I mean, we could put housing, like cost of housing. Oh yeah, I do have housing costs over there. So we can start to move this over just to see what happens. But yeah, we have housing costs. And the greater the housing costs, the less people move. Maybe, see, this is a hard one because
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if the houses are $8,000, people aren't going to be moving here. You know, like there could be too cheap because of the whole tax base stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see.
So all these things, you know, they're very interesting when we start to explore them. And this is a complex system that you're mapping here.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't want to be rushed. Yeah. We have to take our time and really consider, you know, the different ways that these things work so that we've truly understood it. Because this is going to be, you know, this is the foundation on which you would build almost everything that you decide to do with that system. So you start with, you know, you have your map of the system, and then it's going out to that system. You design an intervention, but effectively, I was talking to Mark about this the other day, each time that we intervene in a system, we're asking that system a question. So we're saying, system, do you work in this way? Is effectively what we're asking. So we're having a conversation. We start to have a conversation with the whole, with the system around us. And we only start to do that when we start to make changes to it. And the changes are effectively the questions. And then we monitor the response. And we learn from that response, because we're not always right about the way that the system works. But every time we do something different, we have that opportunity to learn and to improve our diagram, improve our map. So it's all the time, it's this cycle of reality and map, and we're trying to move the map and the territory closer together.
So the intervention is the question, and then the response, like how the system responds, is the answer.
Yes. Yes. And so then it becomes an ongoing conversation, because you keep doing that. You feed that back into your understanding, and you ask another question. You do something different. You poke the system again effectively and say, what happens if I do this? What do you think of this system?
And, you know, sorry, you first, I'll hold mine.
Yeah, so it becomes it's not about having a diagram and doing something that then fixes the system and kapow, everything's done. Because life's not like that. Everything's changing all the time. And so we're constantly, the only thing we can constantly do is learn. And I think for me, I think that's exciting. For a lot of people, I think it can be daunting, but I think it's a very exciting place to be.
I mean, if like, I value curiosity, and that's a big part of what this is like feeding in a way, is all the curiosity. But I find myself like feeling like, because I hear your points, but then I think, well, there's some things that are going to have effects one way or the other that we're not measuring, let's say, and like, how could we measure? So an interesting case for this I was thinking about is like average hours of sleep, or like I've seen how sleep has all these effects, like a zillion. And it's like, maybe we could find a way that we could get some self-reporting on like sleep time or sleep quality or something, but like it's one of those funny ones where like, how are we going to even get that information, you know? But if we had it, it sure would be helpful as a one of the variables of assessing how healthy our community is, you know.
And two responses on that. The first thing is, don't get too hung up by how to measure things to begin with when you're mapping. So don't do that to begin with. And the other thing is, most things can be measured on some scale. You can either, provided you've got a sample, the sort of thing you were talking about with sleep. I did a lot of training as a statistician. I've done a lot of statistical modeling as well. And, if you've got a decent sample and maybe, you only need that sample over a certain amount of time, and you've got, one of those watches that people wear that measures their sleep, you can do things like that. But as I said already, I wouldn't worry about measurement too much when you're at this stage of designing the map.
Got it. Okay. So here we have an interesting one, right? Where housing costs increase, property taxes increase, and then there's a bit of a jump from property taxes to access to quality education. So would it make sense to have like a property taxes investments in education and then access to quality education? Or
I think so, because that makes the how more explicit, because otherwise I'm looking at that and it's not clear to me.
Yeah.
And the way that the diagram should be is that I could come along and look at your diagram and effectively convert it into sentences that would make sense. And it should be, it should have that level of clarity. Because I guess, I don't know how this actually works, but I guess there's a pool of taxes, isn't there? So, people paying their taxes from the money that they've earned from their employment would also potentially go into this. I don't know, because I don't know how things work in your state of America.
Just imagine if you wanted to keep poor people poor and rich people rich, then you would just make sure that the way that investments were made in education were a proxy of the value of the houses. Then the more valuable houses, the more money for education, and vice versa.
I didn't hear everything you said there.
Okay. Let's see. I'll maybe I gotta pop off video for a little while. I was just being a little cynical on our current system, which is based. It's almost entirely based on property taxes. I mean, there's other factors too, but anyway,
right. That's interesting.
Tangent from our work now, though. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of these.
Families moving to Superior. What does families moving to Superior affect? Well, before we do that, let's just link in. I think we had employment. I think employment. There'll be other things affecting families moving to Superior. One of the things that I sometimes do is I go through, if I want to move on a little bit but come back to something, is I'll use the comment tool. So on the toolbar at the top, it might be the one that's like a bubble with the a dialogue bubble. Can you see it? So tools along the top where you've got the variable and you've got the arrow. If you look further along, keep going.
I see the bubble
there. Comment tool.
Yeah.
So if you click on that and go near families moving to, not on it, but to the side of it. No, to the side.
Can I move it? Say like, come back to this.
Yeah, that's what I would do. But normally if you right click on it, if you right click on that box, or you've just typed it, all right, that's interesting. But normally you can make it a different. I wouldn't often use a rectangle. I'd put it in a hexagon or something to make it stand out. On my version, you can change it. Yeah.
Make it smaller though? No.
So, yeah, if you grab a little circle at the bottom of the hexagon, you can shrink it. There you go. There you go. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Cheers. Cool.
Yeah. So then you need to go back to the hand again. Yeah.
Now I can.
There you go. Yeah. So I often use the comment. If you remember, I used the comment to identify reinforcing and balancing loops before, but I also use it to do things like this to keep my attention, so that once I've been back and done it, I can erase it, and I know that that I've kept my to-do list in order. So I'm sort of using the map as a to-do list as well.
I see.
So,
yes. Okay. You could do light touches and come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the interesting thing is, families moving to Superior, why is that important? What does that affect?
Yeah. Right now it's only, I see. Yeah.
At the moment, it's affecting nothing.
Yeah. I mean, families moving to Superior, I'll speak like more qualitatively, but it's like there's like a more engaged community. There's like greater vitality by having I think community participation definitely goes up.
Have you got community participation?
I don't think I do. And I could see how community participation has these psychological benefits too. Maybe that's a little too indirectly related, but within like the biopsychosocial model, being around,
and in fact, I guess the other thing that would affect that is that where we had commute times.
True.
There's a time available to participate. There's the number of people wanting to participate, and then the time, isn't it? So we've got the numbers there. We've got more families. We've got more numbers. But the time to participate would come into that.
Yep. So, and then I think we could also make a case that like the greater household stability, the greater sense of like the greater possibility of community participation, versus like if you have a totally unstable house, then maybe you're not participating with the community.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, so let's just do.
Indeed. So we're starting to identify some of the things here, aren't we?
Time available. We'll say for community participation. And then we got bonding time here. Cool. Oh man, see how cool this looked without any crossovers? Okay. Yeah, look at how commute times just does all this. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Okay, and then where's our community participation? And then bonding time is kind of hanging.
For now, because we know that from your other diagram that affects other things.
Yeah. This is a curious one about, which is kind of sad. And give me your thoughts on this, because I've seen these these notions of either like diminishing returns or it matters until it doesn't matter.
mm,
like
mm.
let's say
Yeah.
household purchasing power. If I'm like have hardly any, then I'm probably going to have a lot less bonding time because I'm so
Mm,
busy um, with doing my three jobs. But after I
mm,
make X amount of dollars a year, it doesn't mean that I'm now going to like bond with my kids more, you know.
mm, mm.
But what do we do about things like that that have kind of like a it matters up to this threshold, then it no longer does?
Well, that would come in when you start to calibrate this, because you start to draw that relationship between those two things and show that for different levels of earnings, what that curve would look like. So you're moving on down the line in terms of the numbers, but in terms of the physical relationship, that means typically that there'll be two routes between the two variables, one of which is something that's making it go up. So as household purchasing power goes up, from a low level, describe again how you saw that working on bonding time.
Yeah, so I have low purchasing power, so I'm like scrambling to do more jobs. I work three jobs to make money. I have no time to spend with my kids because I'm so busy. And then I start like maybe I get better employment. That means I only need to work one job instead of two or three, and that means I'm getting paid more for by the hour. Therefore, I have more hours in the day to spend with my family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we'd be saying as household purchasing power is down, what would be going up is probably the number of different employments, number of different jobs, which means more
Time,
more time,
available time.
well, which means less available time, doesn't it, for bonding? So there's that one, but then there's the one, and I think that's basically what that is what you described, isn't it? It's just that the one thing, it's the number of jobs, number of employments that would then feed into bonding time.
Yeah, I mean, there's number of employees, but then maybe there's like um number of hours working, like hours in a week or something, because you might work one job, but if I work that one job getting paid $12 an hour, I have to work that job like 60 hours a week or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is, you could almost go off and put a little model on the side of that, where you're looking literally at what is driving behavior around money and time in your community.
Right.
Is what it feels like to me,
Yeah.
to sort of work on that as a little separate model before you bring in,
Yeah.
the
All the
pieces
assumptions with it
to this higher level model.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
And let me just show you, I
Yeah.
mean, on Vensim, can you just, yeah, and I'm going to share my screen. Oh, can you enable screen sharing?
Click, 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 click.
Yeah.
Click.
You got it?
You should have it now.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so if I go, I'm sharing my Vensim. Now, if you look down here at the bottom, can you see where it says view one?
Yes.
Now, you should have something like this on the bottom left of yours. Again, because it's on a Mac, it seems to be different. But if I click to that little down arrow at the side there, choose a view to look at. Okay, so I just clicked on view one. Yeah, and it says, can you see where it says new?
Yep.
So I could click on new, and this is another page in the same model. So you can have, I could have something on here. Let's say, I don't know, let's just make something up. So I don't know what this is. Here's one variable. Here's another variable. Yeah. And I'm gonna connect them like this and say fxb, then what I can do is I can go back to my higher view and I can bring that variable in as a shadow variable. Do you remember me saying that you can use shadow variables to prevent cross lines? And there is one here. Can you see health and well-being is in the middle here? But because I didn't want to put another cross line, I've got a copy of it over here.
Nice.
Yeah. So it goes into it, it's kind of it makes it a lighter color and puts those brackets around it. So then I can use that as well to connect variables across views. So I could do here and say, okay, shadow variable, that B from my other, appears as a ghost, and I can link it in here again.
Nice.
So,
okay. So show me how you brought that. How you brought the BB in one more time.
Okay. Just get rid of that. All I did was you'll have something. One of the tools will be a shadow variable.
Okay.
So you click on it. You go to where you want to put your shadow variable.
Yep.
You left click again. You find whatever it is.
Nice.
What I did, I deleted it. I did a naughty delete. I should have just done del because it'll have deleted it from the other page now. So I've only got my A, so I can put that in. Whereas if I did what I think you've already come to this way of deleting. If I pick up the delete the arrow, and then highlight this and press delete on my keyboard, I saw you doing this. Can you see the remove from this view boot, do not change model structure?
Yes.
Now I can do that with del. So when I go back and try to put it back in,
it's still there.
It's still there. But if I do what I did before and use the eraser, that was a really good demonstration of why to be careful with the eraser. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think
I just wanted to show you that if you wanted to explore on a different view, the sort of things we were looking at with time, and then bring it in. I mean, we're leaping a little bit ahead. Normally I wouldn't do this, but you're such a quick learner with this, that being able to see that you can have, it's like in a spreadsheet where you can have different spreadsheets all connected.
Right, like the new tabs or whatever they call them.
The tabs, the tabs. So this is like tabs, but they call them views in Vensim. So if you want to screen share again.
Yeah, let's see if we can find it on mine.
Yeah.
I'd learned that this S is stock, so not what we want.
It should be, normally it's at the bottom left. Do you see where it was on mine? Right, no, but right.
I saw yours over here somewhere.
Oh, you mean the shadow variable?
Yeah.
Yeah, the shadow variable will be that V with the less than and greater sign around it.
Oh,
there.
Okay.
I think that'll be. If you hover,
it'll give you a little tooltip.
It'll give you, if you just hover over it, does it say? Yeah, there you go, shadow variable tool. There you go.
Cool.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. That's good to know. I do have one question before I forget, which is I found some of these that I have like a double line. So here's capable community members. Here's physically healthy community members. The notion being physically healthy community members are more capable community members. I guess it actually doesn't really follow that more capable community members are necessarily healthier.
No, it doesn't, does it?
I think it's the other.
I think it's not both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me actually just.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have more like that. Maybe we can just debunk them or what. Let's see. I saw a few more double arrows here. Here's one.
It's always good having more than one mind on these things.
I bet, huh?
It's really good. I think, I mean, Ward talks a lot about pair programming, and developing one of these, in a pair is always better than creating one alone. And then, what happens then is you get more if you get more perspectives, that again can help. so you bring more people in, but you get to a certain level where there can be too many people and it becomes impossible to manage.
I'm getting an Ashby's Law.
Yes.
I'm getting like the ghost of Ashby's past and something like that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
So how about this one here? Like physically healthy community members, emotionally healthy community members. I do really see these two things
I
linked
think they
close.
do. Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that if you've got a physical problem, it can often lead to a mental problem. And if you've got a mental problem, it can often lead to physical problems.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So is there anything like fundamentally wrong with this kind of a relationship here, where it's like,
No,
okay,
no, you can often have things like that where, and if it's obvious to people, which
yeah,
it's kind of obvious to me, it's
yeah,
fine to leave it. But if it's not, and you want that, people want more explanation for how those two things work, then you can always
add a
add more
variable.
variables. But this is the whole thing. The whole thing is having the right texture. You only add the variables when they're needed so that people can then see the system and agree that that is the way that it works.
This goes back to the whole like value of the map is based on its usefulness kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I noticed in doing this that like the things that I'm putting on here could generally be said for most communities and places. And there's some characteristics that we find that are like more unique to Superior, maybe, based on like our own explorations of what's the unique thing about Superior, especially from the standpoint of like what we're trying to do as regenerative practitioners is to like apprehend as much as we can the essence of this place we call Superior, and
Yes.
do our work to help to adorn it, do our work to
Yes.
help to
Yeah.
bring out that essence, right? So
So what are those variables that make Superior unique?
like one is the enabling of diverse exchange. Like within Superior, we have diverse exchange amongst ourselves, amongst the animals that live here, amongst the land itself. There's always been this like interesting exchange that is diverse in forms of like capitals and the entities to whom are doing the exchange.
Mm. Mm.
That's one example. And so
Mm.
like I mean, I guess we could put that in here somehow, right? Another one is the appreciation of hidden gems. This is some of these like core patterns that we see where you have 6,000-ish years ago, the Native Americans who were here were obsidian mining. They had like their natural mines, and that obsidian came from Superior, which like ended up being the main source of obsidian for certain peoples for a period of time. There's like you can just take all the mining and prospecting as part of that. But then there's also like the hidden gems of our elders that we have here, of our youth that we have here in town, who we consider hidden gems as well. And Superior itself is kind of like a hidden gem that that there's like a strong desire to appreciate it in multiple senses of that word. And then the last one, like the main three, then the third being this pattern of transformational concentration, sometimes looked at as like mercurial concentration almost. Like there's always been this like kind of boom and bust cycle that's happened even before like colonial interests were here. There was this like population booms and busts that that are in the archaeological record now. And that even happened with the mining itself. There was like the big boom and then the really big bust in the 80s. And so also like the notion of having a smelter here brings about this kind of like actual transformation happening to like physical materials as well. And then even just how like the mountains were formed, how the copper ore body that was mined here, it was all happened due to some transformational concentration that even made the silver, gold, and copper possible here. Okay, so those are like the three core like patterns that we've uncovered in doing some of the work that we've done.
So how would you like to capture those as variables?
So I started with the transformational concentration, and I just like couldn't I couldn't see how it could be brought into the mix. Like I do have local innovation here, so that could be a place for what's already existing. I think the hardest one I had was with the appreciation of the hidden gems, partially because it's like less concrete, like it has like multiple meanings in the notion of it. So maybe you could help me a little bit, because I've tinkered, but I couldn't find where it really landed.
Yeah, because it's, how does it map onto the original starting question of, when this system is performing well, what will be different? And, I think you had, it'll be thriving, and it was about health, wealth, and happiness, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And thinking about, how do these things influence those top ends of the system, might help to bring something out. So how does it influence health? How does it influence wealth? How does it, in wealth, I was, as you were talking, I was thinking, this thing about people being attracted to the area. And, on the other diagram, you had tourism. And thinking about these sorts of things are probably the unusual things that would either attract people to be tourists, or could attract new people because it's something different. This is just me sort of thinking about it, but again, I don't live there, and so I think that's a conversation that you need to have with your